What's up, chimps?
Hey, are we doing Sarah first?
Sarah first.
Sarah first.
What's up, chimps?
What up?
We had a beautiful conversation with Sara Gallagher. Bloom? I think Bloom is in that.
Bloom.
Yeah. She's awesome. I've known her for years, owner of Moksha Yoga and DG. Unfortunately closed during the pandemic. But she talked about her realizations from the whole experience and what she gained. She's just a wealth of knowledge, 20 years plus of meditating and being a yoga teacher and owner of a yoga studio for over a decade.
Yeah. I don't have a lot to say about it. It was just a really good conversation. And it was we're a few days off now, I guess. I don't remember a lot. We're a few weeks away from it now. Yeah. But it resonated, man. It was strong. Like it was, we had a lot of like deep realizations. I really don't know what to say. This could be a short one.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation. She's really fucking knowledgeable, like you said. You can see it. You know, she's a deep yoga practitioner, and she had some cool stuff in the works because of the studio closing. That I'm really interested in. What was it called again? Studio Without Walls.
Yeah. How they continued onwards without the actual physical space.
And I love that idea because it's like, I mean, everybody did it during COVID. Like everybody just became like a Zoom teacher or something. But if you kind of lean into it, and then you can have like philosophy conversations and practice conversations.
I mean, it could be endless.
Classes, meditation classes, breath work, like really kind of do everything in a studio mindset and have this kind of one-stop shop place to do it. For me, the community is the big thing. I think that's why I'm interested in joining it, is to have like a bunch of like-minded people, and we all talk about a practice. And I feel like I'm just going to grow in my practice so much, especially if she's the head of the pack. You know, it's crazy.
Well, that's why I love the studio, because the community was so strong there. Like it was really something special, and you'll hear the vibe she brings in a few minutes, and you'll know that like she's the real deal. That was a really, really fun conversation. Deep, fun, playful, all of it. Loved it.
Yeah, deep and funny is the best vibe.
Yeah.
It was. She's a good time, man. She's really cool.
And for all you beautiful people, just do us the favor and honor of liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. It's growing. We love it. And these messages seem to work because the numbers are going up and corresponding with the timeline where we started talking to you more directly, which is pretty cool. So
we ain't stopping, so you may as well start liking.
And we might be we're talking about putting out different types of content, so stay tuned for that. And we'll have less podcast format content. We're going to still do the podcast, but we're going to explore different avenues, see what we can come up with and conjure.
I mean, not to burst the bubble, but and not to sell us short, but it just seems like shorter, more planned podcasts. Just like a 20-minute video, but like a little more prepared.
More structured.
We need the long form. We just want to talk to people. That's awesome. That's always going to be what we do. I hope anyway. But we want to do some other stuff.
Yeah.
So fuck you. Like it or don't.
But hit that subscribe button, even if you don't like it.
Do it.
Thank you. We love you.
Enjoy.
What's up, beautiful people? I'm Nathaniel Pearl.
And I'm Sammy Sheva.
And welcome to Curious Chimps Podcast, a show where we explore the infinite complexities of the human experience.
We do not endorse anything illegal, so please consult doctors, do your research, and for the love of all that is holy, be safe. All right, let's talk about drugs.
Curious Chimps.
Nervous? No, I'm kidding. It's just hot. Oh, Lord. Hey, Lily, what's going on?
Okay, so checklist is done, Sammy. We're good? You have your timer or phone?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Let's
so one of our recent episodes, Lily just jumped on Sammy, and she was sitting on his lap for like 10 minutes. It made no sense.
She wanted in on that energy.
Yeah, after like 80 episodes, she decided that was the one.
Oh my gosh, you guys have done 80 episodes?
I think you're 81. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I kind of didn't realize it until you just said it now. Like, we that's a little nuts.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's the strange journey. It doesn't feel like it's been a while,
Mm-hmm.
but then when you just start scrolling through your content, you're like, oh shit, there's a lot of stuff here. That's like 200 hours.
Wow. And we've had guests like over again, so it's like you kind of get to see, like you get a snapshot, but it's like a nice long conversation. To have 2 or 3 of that, you really can get to know a person just from like a podcast. It's I don't know, it's like you don't expect it.
Yeah.
But it's when I look back on it, I realize like how awesome it is, how fun it is. It's a weird, it's surreal sometimes. I always bring this one up about what was that friend of yours? You had those 2 guys come in. This one guy was listening to all our podcasts, and I'd never met him before.
Oh, yes.
So then he just starts talking to me about these things in my life, and it's as if he knows me. Yeah, and it's
weird.
the first time I'd never seen this guy's face before. I was like this is weird.
It's
but
like he knew your story before you even said it.
Yeah.
We were just talking about something. He's like, oh yeah, I heard that on the podcast. This, and this happened.
It's wild when you put yourself out there and you didn't even know you were putting yourself out there.
I really, yeah. It's like I made a decision. I'm like, do I keep doing this? Like it was weird, but it was like there's this weird little clutch of privacy, like you want to hold on. Like we talked about before. Like change is always weird, but it's like just let go. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
That's the key point. By
It's
the way, we started. It's just
We're in.
We're in.
Yeah, we'd never have a structure. I mean, like if you want to introduce yourself, and I don't know if a lot of people who are into yoga have a hard time throwing labels after their name. I realized this, so maybe we could do it for you if you want. But like you could say like your name, what you're about, and just.
Yeah, hey, I'm Sara, and I am a student of life at heart, and a curious seeker of all things body, mind, and spirit related. The modalities that I express myself through are the physical practice of yoga and the meditation practices, and my newest love, which I believe is the future of yoga, which was also the past of yoga, being breathwork and pranayama.
Awesome.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, good.
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, I only got into breath work halfway into my yoga practice. I came across these facilitators that were just doing breath work sessions.
Sweet.
And yeah, what you uncover with an hour of breathing, they were calling it, it's not, there's 2 types. There's one that they were calling, it's not transcendental breath work. There's
Holotropic?
holotropic, yeah. But the one they were doing was called conscious connective breathing.
Okay.
So apparently it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But when you do that for 1 hour, so much gets revealed. It's like...
The breath practices are not natural. It's not like how we automatically breathe. They're a learned technique. And it's like, it's almost as if through the techniques, and there are many, of pulling your breath in and out in various ways, it's like you bring into your body these little scrubber molecules that like scrub away all the debris and like polish up all your insides and move out all the garbage and the junk and just open you up. It's like they're like the little Molly maids of your interior, It's like to just really so that we can be reminded and returned to our essence. I find the breath work so potent.
That's such a fun way to imagine it. I actually, it's funny because before the ayahuasca ceremony, I pictured it, or I experienced it as like this, it's like getting to know somebody. So it's like slow. Sometimes the person is resisting, so it's like the person being my diaphragm or like my lungs, and I'm just finding it's almost like maybe it's like a problem solving, like a math problem, or like some kind of like I'm studying something. I feel like I'm just getting to know this thing that has been just running in the background my whole life, and then you start finding these little nooks and crannies, and it becomes skillful. It becomes more and more deliberate. And, we could talk about that forever. I'm sure a lot of people relate to that as well. But like during the ceremony, actually, a lot of old practices came in to kind of save me, let's say. And one of them was, I just found myself doing retentions. I don't know why, but I was like sitting properly and just kind of started doing some deep breathing, and I don't know if I was also like doing like blocking nostrils or something, but I was at some point I held my breath, and I had this like clear as day vision of like this cloud of air sort of like in my center, and because I was retaining it, it like took on a form, and then these eyes opened, and it was like a thing. And it was like, oh, okay, I have stuff to do. Like it was like it came to life, and it was like I know what I need to do in here, and it just made me think of that when you were saying like these things come in and kind of scrub. It's not related, but it's just a fun weird anecdote of like.
Oh my gosh, I had so many visuals as you were just talking.
Good.
You know, because it's like the retention, you know, and then the practice of softening around the fullness and the holding full. I see it visually as whether it's this thing, you know, but being able to travel the pathways, the deep interior pathways within as a way of strengthening your nervous system. So like the way that I just heard your experience was this deep wisdom came to me. You know, I started to breathe in a deliberate way as a way of fortifying my nervous system so that my container, being the vehicle of your body, could hold the new information, could hold the new neurology, could hold the new vision or ideas. Like I see it so graphically in my mind.
That's awesome. I never thought of it. It was so like literal, and I was so confused, but I love that that view of it. Like I don't even want to change anything about it. It's amazing. Like it's perfect. You know, it's like I went home in a way. Like it was obviously like this novel and in some ways stressful experience, and I was like, okay, if I do this, it'll transform it in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, breath is life.
Yeah.
And when we're out of it, it's death. So it's like you come into the world with a breath and you go out with a breath.
And then when you're not paying attention to it, it's just like autopilot mode. So there's just these, and sometimes that's good. If you're doing like a project or something that's just redundant and repetitive, sometimes tuning out is okay if it's getting done. But when you come back to your breath, that's like a mini rebirth that you can experience infinite amount of times during a lifetime. And then when you come back, it's just like, it kind of wants to make you emotional sometimes, because it's like, where have you been? You know, and you just return to your breath. And I feel like, at least for me, it's been delayed because of this whole situation with what's going on in the world, where I only returned to my breath after like a year. And when I came back, it was like shattering almost. It's like, oh shit, you're like hanging yourself up and just doing your thing, but you forgot that we're here, breath and life.
Well, it's pretty fascinating that it's, in the sense of breath, that it's a respiratory pandemic that we're in, you know, so the fear to breathe, the breathing behind a mask is all about, you know, getting just to the surface.
And like I'm sure we all did this, but when the pandemic first started, we were all terrified. Some people probably holding their breath when they walk by someone or something. So it's just like this whole year was like a manifestation of retention and holding in and just suppression and, you know.
I know in January, I was like, we just have to fucking breathe. And everyone's afraid to breathe because we're afraid to be around each other. You're afraid to sneeze. You're afraid to cough. So I launched a breath practice that was every day, and it was free. And I was just like, my mission is that 1,000 souls are breathing. Wow. And we carried it on for 152 days straight, 7 days a week. And it was transformational. It was so anchoring in such an unstable time. And the stories from the students who would participate were just magnificent, magnificent transformations.
Do you have any examples? Do you remember any off the top of your head?
So one student who was not even new to breath, she came in. She's like, she did 3 consecutive days with it was with me because I co-taught with a colleague of mine, Chelsea, and we split up the 150 some odd days, and so this student came in, practiced breath work for the first time, and basically had a whole reconciliation in her entire life, and pivoted her entire life after the third practice. That's one story. I have another story of a woman in her late 70s, and she had a reaction. Let me just back that up. She had an episode of a temporary amnesia and was hospitalized. And in the hospital, she started to employ the techniques that we had been using. And so in the hospital, when she was connected to the monitors, could see the like visual of her breath. And then when the doctors were coming to check her out, they said, we've never met a woman of your age with this capacity in your lungs. Like, this is incredible. And she was like, well, you should go to Sarah's class. I mean, there's just like a million stories about how, you know, how the breath and the consciousness and the moving and the doing. I mean, this is the thing, is we have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. We have
How
to do
it's
it.
transformed a moment, a day, a life, an experience.
And it progresses. The more you do it, like the deeper and fuller the breath gets, and then the insights and the revelations can come from that. You know, it's like as you do the breath work, you're just uncovering so many layers of what's just being buried in the tunnels of our existence, and it just comes out. And it's like, it's an ongoing practice, because depending on where you are in your day, in your life or week, you know, retention happens everywhere. You know, when something scares you, you hold your breath, and then that kind of stores a sensation of, or like a block in a sense. So then when you give your moment of breath work, whether it's 5 minutes, an hour, whatever, even 10 seconds, you're unlocking those blocks that you've accumulated.
Yeah, like a way of, almost in a sense, I think what I'm hearing is like a way to process life.
Yeah, both physically and mentally. Because
Yeah.
sometimes the stimulus can be a psychological effect, but it stores in the physical body.
I mean, I really feel like everything we think, feel, see, do, hear, everything we've taken in through our senses is stored in our body. Yeah. And what the techniques and the technologies with the breath work allow us to do is to empty the subconscious mind. So it's said that in any given second you can have 1,000 thought forms, and then we process one of those thought forms. But what happens to the other 999? They get dumped into the subconscious mind, which you could imagine that it's like this finite storage unit, right? So it's like the hoarding part of our energetic being, and we're burdened and carrying around this huge amount of useless weight until we do a practice. Maybe it's ayahuasca, maybe it's breath, but we do a process that engages us in such a way to consciously empty the subconscious mind. And it's in that lightening of the load, the new possibilities, new thought forms, new ideas can be received.
Spot on. And I'll use ayahuasca as an example. It's just sometimes you go into these experiences and nothing happens. You drink the same amount as everyone. You're sitting in space. And that happened to me actually the last ceremony I went to. I had almost no experience. And then I realized, well, I've known this for a while, but it was a revelation again that it's working. It's just not at the conscious layers. It's just sorting out the unconscious mind, because the unconscious mind, the way you were describing it, I pictured like a giant library, like the biggest library you can imagine, and the workers just quit. They're like, fuck it, it's too messy. Well, you know, and the books are everywhere. And then when you do like an ayahuasca or a breath work or a meditation, it's like, they get motivation to clean up again. So they're just putting everything back. And so I felt like that ayahuasca experience was that. It was just, there was nothing at the conscious level that needed to be addressed at the moment. It was the unconscious was so busy, so crowded. And the message I did get from that experience was that your internal environment is so acidic. So I can relate that to the mental state as well. It was just too acidic to communicate directly to me. And I had to clean up first. Yeah.
So what did you do after?
I went on like a strict diet plan, started just like being more mindful, starting addressing things that I've been kind of sweeping under the rug. You know, there's moments I've come to realize I have a food addiction, and I used it my whole life. I got away with it when I was younger because I would train so hard, so I never really noticed it. But as the pandemic hit and like all my favorite places got pulled away from me, you know, I noticed that pattern was really strong, and it was just such an easy way to suppress all type of sensations. You know, I just numbed myself. So leading to the ayahuasca ceremony, I was just so numbed out from my patterns that it was revealed to me. It's like, look what your internal environment is. You can't just come here and expect to achieve any type of enlightenment or any type of state of mind without addressing what you've been doing leading to this place.
Yeah. I love this. Like what I'm hearing with you is that like the universe is going to work with us if we meet it. Like our work is to prepare the body as a vehicle, the body as an abode, the body as a house that houses spirit and soul, that houses the deeper wisdoms. And in this human form, living on a polarity planet as an energetic being, our work is to tend to the structure so that spirit information, consciousness can pass through us. And I love that because it's like, no, you got to show up and do the work. You got to do your part and we'll do our part.
That's it.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That was the direct message I got. And when I got home, I'm like, I know what I got to do. You know, it was just like an internal checklist. And it was really not about changing things. It was just about addressing things.
Did you have any resistance to addressing things?
No. Yes and no. I mean, once you're aware of it, it's kind of like it's there, and it's just, there's that initial resistance, but it's just there. It doesn't move. It's just in front of you. So at some point, you're just going to have to work through it. And at least, thankfully for me and my practice, thankful for my practices, it was easier to address these things. The harder part was the effort used to suppress it and avoid it. Like, that was the effort.
Totally.
You know, it's funny. It's because it's like we get so caught up in thinking.
Like
We get so caught up in the resistance, and then when you just let go, it's just like so much can happen instantaneously.
Yeah.
You know? It's like a yoga practice when you just like the hardest part is the resistance your body's created to the poses or whatever. But you know, when it releases, you unlock so much. Yeah.
Yeah, the rivers can flow.
So the harder part was the resistance, like the built-up resistance. Addressing was easy. It's like, you know what you've been doing. That resistance is opened, you know.
I just thought of something kind of cool. I've been reminded recently that sometimes when you have like a lack of flexibility in one muscle group, it's because the antagonist muscles are not actually strong enough. So in like quote unquote tightening another muscle, you kind of trick your brain into like releasing something. And it kind of reminds me of what you said about like showing up and just kind of like meeting the universe halfway, like you said. And there's this channeling or like this vessel just like waiting for the opportunity for the right thing to fit in. So it's like this I mean, it's like a story as old as time, you know, like if you put in the work, the luck will come through eventually. These chances kind of pass and pass and pass. But if you're expecting it in whatever way that is, then you have that like that perfect moment where things click. And like it's I love the way you put it. Like in my head, it's like especially after something like an ayahuasca ceremony, you could have this momentum or this motivation, you know, like I'd almost say like the fear of God put in you to be like, I got to change something, you know. But it was, I think, like you said, maybe that's kind of wrong. Like it actually showed you that you want to do this and that it's actually easier.
That's the wording needs to be correct there, because there's no fear afterwards. It's more of just like this compassionate awareness that, like, so a lot of my thing is I would motivate myself with a very negative internal dialogue. Most of us do. It's just the common thing. But I laughed at myself because on the surface, it looked like I was doing very healthy things, like going to yoga, training jiu-jitsu, and mixed martial arts and everything. But it was actually a symptom of a very negative feedback loop. You know, it was like, if you don't go, you're you're weak, you're not worthy. These were internal dialogues. So I would go, and yes, I'm exercising, I'm doing good things, but the foundation was just this dirt, this dirty mindset of just like pushing myself with like the negative narrative. So a lot of it has been undoing those layers and changing the narrative and coming at it with compassion. Do these things because it feels like you love yourself and you want to express yourself in these beautiful avenues, whether it's training or whatever, but don't shame yourself for any of that. So a lot of the cleaning up, I would say, was just creating more of a compassionate environment for myself. So that was the big lesson from that ceremony. Yeah, it's just like
powerful.
Yeah, because the resistances I would have, the suppression I would have was also fueled by that mindset,
Yeah, you get in that spiral of like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is what I need to do. Like you feel like you deserve this pattern, sort of. I don't know. It's such a weird game.
You trick yourself into it, or I don't know what it is. But it's really just missing love. So then when you create that love for yourself, everything could be addressed, and there's no shame in it or there's no fear in it. It's just you're addressing it because you want to heal. Like that's your intention. Yeah.
It's this weird feedback too. It's like the same way when you become present, you can like the breath is there waiting for you. If you start playing with the breath, you kind of find presence. Like you never know what's going to lead you where. So it's like you have this presence in this situation, this pattern, and then in order to cross it, one way or the other, you find like forgiveness, So if you work that backwards as well, you can just like find forgiveness and realize you're already kind of on the other side of that pattern. So it's like it doesn't matter where you come from, but all these modalities are like webbed together. Like it's not a back and forth. It's like it's its own jumble sort of, but it's way more organized, I guess, than that subconscious jumble that you talked about.
Lots of gateways in.
Yeah.
Lots of gateways in. But to get as present, to be able to hear that negative feedback loop, the negative motivation loop underneath, that's big work. That's a total reprogramming of your neurology.
Yeah. I can't say that work is anywhere near done, but addressing it is like the first step, creating that awareness. And then it's like a lens you're wearing because now you're seeing it operate in everything you do. Whereas before it was just operating.
Yeah, it's like once you know, then you can do something about it. But until you know, it's not in the realm yet.
Yeah, it's controlling you in a sense.
Yeah.
That's the biggest
Driving
thing.
the bus.
Yeah.
Driving, yeah. It's like you're in a bus with like 20 steering wheels. And you don't know who's driving sometimes. And you could even be like, oh, I'm driving. But some other guy is actually like, let's go this way, let's go that way. And you have all these quick things that, I don't know if this is everybody. I recently listened to like some kind of theory on meditation, and they were saying how you're going to miss a lot of the thoughts, a lot of these quick things that are really governing how you feel and how other thoughts come up and how you really color your day. And I fell into that little, I consider it a trap where you think it's just you, like something's wrong with me or something. And it was actually kind of nice to hear that it's like, it's just human. It's like, you're fine. And it's like, I mean, you said, I don't like, does it ever end? Is there like I don't know, like, do you become something better that like gets to avoid this like human condition? But I feel, I picture just being like living in the Arctic or something. Like you can get better at surviving the environment, but the environment never goes away. And I kind of wanted to ask you if like, is there like is that enlightenment or something? Like, is there some...
Enlightenment's just a concept in a sense for me, but where I'm oriented in my practices is I'm a householder. I have a family, and my practices, I choose my practices so that I can live well in the messiness of the world. And does that mean I never get angry or I don't swear? No, it doesn't mean any of that. And hopefully it provides me a bit of space between a stimulus and a reaction, a space for a new thought or a new idea. And then, the attuning or the tending to our subtle body allows us and gives us that grace of being able to navigate those, I forget what you call them, like glimpses or fleeting ideas or thoughts, you know, and then the meditations can provide you with tools to create space. So, you know, I think in my early years, I had like a fantasy of, you know, meditating on a mountaintop, you know, and now it's just about being home. It's about being home in this body and home in my home and home in my neighborhood and home in the city and home on earth and connected to the cosmos.
Like being the mountaintop, sort of. Yeah. I get you. I've been thinking about this a lot. You can't walk away from yourself.
Yeah, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
For real. And it's funny because there's a lot of the practices that say like there is no you, or in a lot of the teachings, let's say, that are like, you know, you find yourself leaning on these thoughts, and then you feel like the thoughts are leaning on you as you go deeper into the practice, and then you realize like nothing is leaning on anything, and then you just feel like I don't know, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is about to get a little weird, but like I feel, it's hard to even describe, obviously, but it's like you reach an event horizon, and it's like the awareness or whatever is like this black hole, and there's really nothing there in a weird way, and there's no reference point. It's like when you go as close to the center as you can, there's this kind of unreachable quality to it, because then there's no reference point, because you're always using you as the reference point, but then all these concepts, all these ideas, all these like narratives or associations, they're on the border of this thing. So then you're just kind of like I get lost at that point. I've been thinking about meditation a lot lately, so maybe I'm kind of pulling the conversation in another direction, because I would love to keep talking about breath work, to be honest, and they're intrinsically mixed, but I'm curious to your kind of interpretation or opinion, like, and it's just fun, you know. If we kind of skip to the end of the conversation, the point is that it's just fun. It's just cool to, let's say, it creates that more of that space. And maybe, I don't know if this is debatable as well, but like, is the more space the better? Is it always just good to, or are we going to become like useless at some point? Like you said, like we're homeowners, you know, like I don't want someone to have to like shave me and feed me. Like
No, you want to keep the mind in the body.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
the practice, right?
Head in the sky, feet on the ground, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Have I stolen that from someone? Anyway.
We just borrow from everyone, right? Like,
Yeah, it's all recycled.
yeah, we're inspired by, great things, and then you weave it through your narrative, and it becomes yours. So, I think this idea of kind of like the unraveling the ball is that whenever you untangle a knot, there's nothing underneath, right? It is nothing.
Yeah.
You just untangle it, and then there's nothing. So,
it was like a concept.
yeah. It's just a knot. Fuck it, it's just a knot. Doesn't need to be more than that. Because and I think we get knotted in our personal nature and our personal narrative, but the universality of our being doesn't necessarily get knotted. It's everything that we lay on top of it. Like, at the center of every cherry is a cherry pit, right? The pit is what is universal. And in the way that I understand the teachings through my teachers is that that is universal nature. The pit is universal nature. What is personal is the flesh of the cherry. Is it ripe? Is it hard? Is it juicy? Is it soft? Is it rotten? So deep within us is this, like, the pit, the universality of our being. It's everything on the surface layers that is personal nature. So I feel like part of that unraveling of the personal nature is to be able to be rooted into the matrix of the planet, which is our heavenly host, and to also be connected with an antenna to the cosmos, so that you rise above the personal nature, because that's the shit that we get lost in. Those are the knots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because in universal nature, the universe exists in patterns, seasons. Through the repetition of these patterns, we have the opportunity to gain insight.
Cycles, polarities.
I mean, I love the conversation of polarities.
It's a big one. Is that outside of this pit as well? Or is there kind of, I mean, because there's like a quality, like you said, like this, like the earthly existence. Obviously, in the 3D, there's polarity everywhere you go, but like that's kind of the point. But I feel like there's this deep human essence that will, for me anyway, still have a lot of, let's say, story attached to it. Or maybe I might even use the word karma, because I am a monkey human on planet Earth. But I can go really deep into that, where it's like there doesn't have to be more than that. And there's all this kind of human, even just my life, let's say, my few decades on this planet, I can shed that and just kind of see, let's say, one part of the karma as just like, I'm a dude on this planet, or I'm like a pit, surrounded by some flesh, like you said. But they're so connected to me still. I find there's such a...
It's so personal.
It is, yeah. Maybe that's
so fucking personal.
I guess that's like the biggest knot.
That's the thing.
Yeah. I'm here.
Yeah, and it's, it is a cosmic miracle that we're incarnated in a human form. It takes 84,000 incarnations to land in the human form. Like, it is a gift. It's a gift that we're here in this way, in this time.
That's insane.
Right?
So, like, we're all Buddhas when you think of it that way. Like, that's really cool. I never heard that.
But that personal pit we were talking about, that not connected from the flesh to the pit, is like, you have to kind of look at it that every day is a gift, that attachment is still there, because when we die, when we take that final exhale, that is the release of the pit from the cherry flesh. I love this example. But I think every day is a practice to, in a sense, prepare for that last breath. In a sense, it is every day of life is a training wheels for that final moment. So it's not about untangling it, it's just understanding the separation and being okay with it, and just incorporating that into your practice and into your life. Because how many of us are attached to that pit, thinking that the flesh, thinking that that's us, and then their whole life is the flesh of the cherry, and then when that final moment comes, there might be so much resistance between the two separating. So I think...
Yeah, I mean, we've probably all had stories of elderly people in our life who are bitter and resentful and don't want to let go.
Yes.
Right? That's what I'm kind of picturing. Like, can you reconcile the highs and lows of your life so that you let go peacefully?
Yeah. That's the journey, is just having a peaceful transition. But I had a crazy vision once during Vipassana. In between the meditations, you can go to your room, or you can walk around there. There's like a gymnasium. You can just walk around for like 15, 20 minutes at a time. And I just had this crazy vision. It was like a story. It was so poetic. But it was like a king was just, his kingdom was imploding. It was just like going inwards, just falling into like a abyss. And he was trying to grab all his treasures and everything he's achieved. He was just grabbing his crown, his jewels, his cup, his wife. Like, everyone was there. He was just trying to grab it. And then it kind of like had a bird's eye point of view, and it zoomed down, and it was really just him coming to terms with his death, and that all that implosion was just like his inner world was dying. So he was dying. None of that stuff was even moving. It was just he was dying, attached to the flesh of the cherry, in a sense. So I remember there was such a humble vision, because it reminds you of
That's intense.
It was very intense, but it reminds you of the inevitable abyss we're all going to go to. So how do you incorporate that into your life?
I heard something recently you guys might like. It's I forgot where it's from. Probably the Buddha said it. Let's just give him the credit.
If we're all the Buddha, then he said it.
One of them did, yeah.
One of them.
But it was something like death is not a story, it's an instruction. Something like that. And I mean the king thing and the cherry thing, it's like it's making me feel like the instruction is to just accept. Sometimes there are things, everything's changing. We all know, like this anicca idea, like we have to let go of everything. When we think something should have gone and it didn't, or vice versa, like there's this flow of time that's this weird like cage of our experience in some ways. Maybe we could talk about how it isn't as well, but so my point is that there's this, like I am the cherry right now, which means that I am the knot, which means that I will be nothing one day, in the sense that I am me now, and I will be this dead flesh, but I will also be this pit that is this, part of that endless cycle. Will become a tree, will become more cherries maybe, I don't know. So it's like the way that death is an instruction line made me realize like, I don't have to dwell on it. A lot of people talk about this fear of death, but it's like, it's a map sort of, like what you think you are, what you are using as an instrument to experience life will fluctuate in a way that is incomprehensible one day. So like observe the fractal nature of that in everything. And, I don't know, it takes a load off.
Yeah, I mean, it's nature. Great nature provides us as examples. All form deforms.
Ooh.
And then it reforms to inform.
Ooh.
So, like, I know we're kind of like riffing on the visual of the cherry, but I think we should add the stem. And the stem is the Tai Chi. It's the central axis within us that connects us to all that is, was, and will ever be. Right? Because the pit, the flesh, the stem connected to the tree connected to the earth connected in our heavenly host that graciously hosts us is connected to. It just keeps going, right? In your mind, like the stem.
Yeah.
It's fractal.
Forever.
Yeah, because then the pit will fall, and then the whole cycle over thousands of years will just redo.
Compost.
Yeah. That's
It's
powerful.
all compost, man. Surprisingly deep.
But you're a homemaker. Because this gets tricky when there's more knots and variables when you have children and family and responsibilities like that. Like I have Lily, and that's already an attachment. Obviously not as big as having a child, but how do you incorporate these kind of understandings when I'm sure those knots get so tight sometimes?
I, like a million years ago, I was given the thought form through a teacher that, children choose their parents to come in through for their own unique soul's journey. And my perspective on my children, while yes, very attached in the 3D realm, to protect and to care for them, I have a very kind of universal view of them that they chose me, so I am here to the best of my ability to serve and to guide them as a soul being on the planet. Because that's what I'm interested in, right? I'm interested in beyond the third dimension. So I don't know if that gives me a bit of space in the knot, because it's not to say that I'm not knotted to my children. I am very much. And by the way, I think "and" is the most spiritual word in the world. I am a mother, bear, and I accept, know, and trust that my role is to guide these energetic beings on the planet. So it's not about me, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
It's about what does their being need. And not at the expense of not knowing what my being needs. I mean, that's the dance.
Yeah.
That's the end.
That's the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in those lines, when it's what you need and what they need, and then it's kind of can get mixed up. And sometimes you hear stories where parents will give everything to their children, because that's what they need. They thought they needed. And then either sometimes the parent ends up resenting the child because they've sacrificed so much of their existence, or then the opposite happens. The child gets so much, or not opposite, but the child will get so much, and then kind of, it's like a weird dance when you overextend or you underextend. It's fucking, that's going to be a journey.
I mean, this is, I don't know if it's boundaries, but it's that old, it's the maybe this is so overused, but when we used to fly, and they would say, you put on your oxygen mask first and then another.
Yeah.
So I think we can only understand the nuances of our contact with others when we are tending to the spirit, the breath, the body, the vessel, on our own.
Yeah.
And then we can be, so my teacher says, you learn to fit yourself first. So like your eyeballs fit in your eye sockets, and your tongue fits in your mouth, and your knee fits in your armpit, and that you learn how to fit yourself first before you can fit others.
Yeah.
And that's the work that we're not directed to as younger beings.
Yeah.
Right? Even parents will say, eat this for me, finish, you know what I mean? Like, it's all in our language. It's like, we need to direct our youth towards their core, towards their Tai Chi, towards the stem of their own frickin' cherry, so that they know that they have a center, that they are connected to all that is, was, and will ever be. And their expression here on the planet, their mission, their soul's mission, is what they're here to uncover.
Totally. 100%. I feel a lot of, personally, I won't talk for anybody else, but I really feel like I was taught a bit by my parents and a lot by TV that like self-sacrifice was virtuous.
Yeah.
And I love how you used the "and" just now, like you're going to embody your life and have self-love and self-respect, and really only through that be able to approach it with other people. I don't know what it's like to have kids. I could turn all of that inside out, but again, maybe just in a 3D way, and then above that or beyond that or within that, you're saying, this is a soul that chose me, and I'm going to take care of myself to take care of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so devoid of that fear and that like, oh, I need to bleed for this person's blood or something, like some weird upside down. Yeah.
Totally. It's such an old story.
Yeah. And it's kind of crumbling now.
Yes.
Because there's so much greed actually that is born of that. This kind of overcorrection of like, I'm cool, I'm confident. And these people end up being mean or selfish as a way to counterbalance this, like, I am only virtuous when I'm, bleeding, like we said before. And it's like, nah, man, like we could just kind of just love each other.
Manipulating what I want.
Yeah. I love that that's perfect, because it looks like self-sacrifice, but you're really trying to kind of squeeze more juice out of life when you have enough. That's kind of blowing my mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I this is more of like an intellectual thing. I think the last year or so, especially with the podcast, especially with COVID, I've been actually learning it, like beyond the mind. Mm-hmm. But I always feel like let's say in the story of the chakras, this idea of the heart chakra being this representation of love, I always interpret it as self-love. And through that, only through that, like once you kind of are a storage for love, like you talked about before, about like embodying what needs to come in so that it can come in, then you have love, essentially, or are love, instead of looking for it in that grip way, that 3D way, that like fear, let it slip away. You know, it's all bound by time, and you're trying to resist it and hold on to it, and that, like the thing with the king, it's this it's in the pit, it's not in the flesh, you know. It's like, and again with the stem, like I don't know, it becomes like the thing you can almost identify with, instead of being like a person on earth who has love as some kind of tool. Like, you're love, and you have this person on earth as a tool. It's such a subtle difference.
I love that.
Me too. It just made me happy. Yeah. Well,
Like the love is like the beginning building blocks of this whole thing. It's just the foundation is love and unity, and then it just all gets individualized on top of that. You know, and we kind of search for love sometimes and forget that it's all there. It's all at those layers. It's just, that's like the DNA of life, you know.
it almost feels fundamental, like gravity is love. Like just this attractor, just this like.
Yeah.
I've been reading a bit lately about like the magnetic frequency of the heart and how it is so much stronger than that of the mind. Now, I don't know much more kind of intelligent to talk about it in like a, you know, a scientific way. And I maybe, Nate, you remember, like I used to have these slogans like heart, mind, you know, it's like, I think my whole life I've known that it's heart is where we need to be operating from.
Yeah.
And yet it's so necessarily, I guess, when all that we're saying, it's not been necessarily supported by TV or parents or, you know, in the ways that we know, until we get lucky enough to have a transcendental experience or a spiritual experience. And all a spiritual experience is it's beyond your knowing. That's what a spiritual experience is. It's beyond your knowing. But until we have that, I don't know, maybe it's like I'm always looking for like proof, you know, but to just vibrate from the heart, which I think I've known my whole existence. I don't know. It's a way to be.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I can relate to that because a lot of when I do ayahuasca or these kind of ceremonies or any type of breath work session or even a meditation, it's always been about opening up my heart for me. It just gets us like shielded up. And then when this opens up, everything I think about is just way more in line with what I truly want. It's like a compass. And it's just like, it's always pointing to the right direction because it's just, this is open and expressed. And it's just, I guess I would love to learn more about this magnetic frequency you're talking about. I think it's attracting what it needs.
Yeah.
You know? And it gets closed up sometimes, and then that's where the work has to you kind of go back in circles, but with the wisdom to reopen it. But it's a compass to go through life, is to lead with your heart. To connect to that is also can be challenging for many.
Yeah, I mean, to drop down out of the mind and into the heart.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it that way, because that's how I kind of that's how I do it. Oddly enough, like the cacophony caused by breath work or some kind of plant medicine or something. Like you go through that washing machine, and it's like you instinctively want to escape the mind, and you find a way, like you're almost pushed out. You know, like something just squeezes you, and the pit flies out. And the cherry's gonna be like in the title or something, I'm sure. But like once you're out, you see what's left, sort of.
Once you're out, you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like like we talked about the breath. Like there's things that kind of arise in this space, and it very much feels like a space between everything. I don't know. And it's like you realize some fundamental quality about it, and it seems so accessible hope like for a time, you know, I think with some practice it can remain so, because you do obviously get kind of put back into the body, and you're just a nervous system. You're a monkey. You have to just practice and do to be, essentially. Do to realize that being is effortless, but it's the effort to get there. It's so odd. Anyway.
Yeah, it's the effortless effort.
Yeah.
Which is Wu Wei. And the joke is that it takes a shit ton of effort to become graceful.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we see with athletes or, you know, concert pianists, it looks effortless. That's the Wu Wei.
Yeah. Like you practice so much, you put so much through the mind to be able to bypass it, and to just kind of then like the body. I mean, this is like Zen or something. This is it's like that idea that you just let it be, but you've put so much energy into the being of your form to be, let's say, like a pianist or a martial artist or something. You can really step aside. I mean, I don't know if I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but I used to love free running, like parkour, and it's just dangerous and intense because you're climbing and running, and if you make one wrong move, you could like fall off of something high or like really hurt yourself or something. And not so much the danger, but the aspect of that skillful mind, which is very synonymous to some meditation practices, but obviously more kind of like, you know, adrenaline and dopamine, and just there's something about it that was so grounding and centering for me, and very spiritual. I think it kind of put me in that path where it's like, what else in life can give me this state? And then eventually you say, what is this state? You start kind of becoming inquisitive, and it just kind of led me down this crazy path. And I mean, you know, throw in some yoga practices and magic mushrooms, and like, you know, one thing leads to another, and it's funny because I want to go back to that. Like, there was no coincidence, I think, that was like my entry, because there's something. This is so off topic, but like I just love it. I just love it, and it's like you get good at something, and then you don't have to think about it, and you're just in this. I mean, it's flow. Like everyone knows this buzzword, but it's like a heightened meditation. You know, it's skillful. Like I feel like I'm making this distinction a lot lately. Like, you can sit and just be. But then, I'd love your opinion on this, by the way. Like, there's so many ways to meditate, like air quotes. You can do Vipassana. You can do Metta. You can do Anapana. You can have any focus, a deity, a part of your body. You can breathe this way, breathe that way. You can look at the thoughts and find the source. You can look at them without judgment. You can then I could go on for another hour probably. Yeah, so what's up with that?
I don't know, dude. I've spent the last 20 years of my life meditating my brain out, you know, like
literally.
And you know, and it's really been recently that I've found my way to the Kundalini practices. And there's something really good here. Something really direct, really lined up, really potent. That, you know, again, I guess all the meditations, there's like parkour, like free running, there's many gateways into a spiritual experience. Ayahuasca is a gateway in. Just, you know, it's gotta like align with you. So I don't know. I there's so many different ways in. The portal the pandemic opened for me was the gateway into the Kundalini practices as a system for meditation. That, you know, and after 20 plus years of, and I mean, I've done it all. I've done it all. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm here.
This is it.
That's going to be my next webinar. This kind of 20 years of meditating. What did I learn?
Oh, wow.
That should be a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
But so I hear about Kundalini. I may have tried a class. I don't know. What's her name again? She used to do the Friday night.
Oh, Kimiko.
Kimiko,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I'm studying with Kimiko.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So I've done what appeared to probably be maybe a watered down Kundalini for the type of people that were there that weren't too into it, so she kind of probably brought it down some levels. And it was on one of the full moons, but we were doing some type of movement, repetitive movement, like our shoulders were wide out like a letter T, but like we were doing something where your shoulders started to burn. And she had us going for like 5 minutes with some deep breathing and chanting. Yeah. And what I understood from it is that it's like, what I got out of it was that you're creating this pain sensation so much that you kind of tune out into like this meditative state of just accepting that pain and kind of forgetting it or dissipating it, like dissipating, I don't know, kind of just like vipassanaing it, like just watching and observing the pain as it kind of fades out. So that was my experience with Kundalini. I know it's way deeper than that, but
yeah, I mean,
like
that's
maybe
wicked.
Yeah,
you know, does it dissipate, or do you choose to focus on something else? You know?
Yeah, that's going to have my head spinning for a while.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I mean...
It's still there waiting for you if you
it
go
hasn't
back.
Moved.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Wow. Yeah.
You dissipate, essentially. That's funny.
That's it. It was just a focus
Story.
shift. Yeah.
It's the story we tell ourselves that it means something. The pain in my shoulders means this, so I should stop.
Yeah.
Right? And that's personal. Kundalini is referencing energetic patterns and archetypes and geometry, and through the kriyas and the mind and the breath and the drishti and the gaze and that when we pass through the threshold, you may or may not have another experience. So just the techniques. It's the yoga technology. And it's vast and potent. It's like a speedway. I think it's a speedway.
I had a friend at my old job. I came back there. Details are relevant. I get caught in them. He was a manager, but he was also a Kundalini teacher.
Amazing.
Yeah, and he quit now, and he's like full time in that, which made me happy for some reason, for obvious reasons. But one time, because I had my own experience with Shivananda, and they're great, but they kind of try to be very like, let's call it holistic, you know? And he described Kundalini to me as like a very, like you said, a very direct way in all ways, physical and psychological and everything, to experience the other bodies, is what he said.
Yeah.
And I said something like, aren't you afraid to like lose attachment to or connection to like the physical body? And he laughed, like uncontrollably, genuinely burst out into laughter, and he said, "There's no chance. Like it's like the thickest, grossest body,
the densest body."
Yeah, he's like, "Don't worry about that. Like work as hard as you can. Try to detach from it. It won't work." And it just kind of, I mean, at the time, I was like, okay, but it's just coming up now, and it's making me feel like yeah, go for it. Like the universe is saying, I dare you. Like try. Like have fun trying. It won't work.
You know, I used to have this really like false notion of what Kundalini was, and you know, it's through the power of speech and through the power of teachers where they say something, and as a student, it sticks, right? Like, oh, don't do this because you're going to blow your circuits was a big one, you know, back the last 15, 20 years. As it like not, I don't think it was meant as a fear tactic. You know, it was just I think maybe an ignorance to unknowing. So you know, I am forever a student, and the way that I understand the physical body in relation to the other bodies. So it's in the Kundalini system. There's 11 bodies, and you know, we need to tend to the physical body, so that we can also have the experiences of the more subtle bodies, and that you root so that you can rise. And we've been saying that for years in the studio, right? Like root to rise, you
Yeah.
know, from the forward fold all the way up to standing, right?
Yeah,
and
root
then
to rise.
this is this like other, you know, evolution of it that, you know, anchor the body. So you don't want to leave the body for too long. Otherwise, who knows what's going to move in. I mean, this is our vehicle in this day, this time and space, right? This is the vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why we're operating through this vehicle. And I don't think it's about completely leaving it until it's our time. I think there's so much to be learned and experienced. And root to rise is beautiful because it is that. When you're rooted in this existence, it just, that magnetic field or whatever you want to call it, of just connectivity just opens up.
Yeah.
But we need to go inwards and ground ourselves in order to blossom. Otherwise, it's just like, who's going to move in, like you just said?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I have friends that are just so out there, but then that connection to here is just kind of wobbly or spaced out, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it's just, there's just so much work to be done in this first, if that makes sense.
And there are so many places to go cosmically.
I love this and.
And the most spiritual word on the planet.
Yeah, I'm going to use it.
Please, it's yours.
It's making me think like the yes and, like the, you know, when people do what's that called? Wow, I can't think of it now. My brain is freezing. When people are doing comedy and it's like sketch comedy, but it's like improv. There we go, improv. So the first rule of improv is yes and. So like you don't let your other person sink, sort of. Like if they come up with an idea and they kind of go with some like line of a joke, even if you don't fully get where they're going, you do this yes and it's like a way of life. It's like an attitude. It's not just saying yes and. It's like you really yes and like the vibe.
Yeah, I love that, because then you don't make anyone wrong.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't about judging their take on it, right? Yes, and.
Yes. the way it sounds when you're bringing it up now is like you're avoiding making more knots, because like as opposed to using the word but. You know, like you'd say like this but that, and it's like you have to kind of about face. You have to turn and look at this thing as opposed to that thing. It's like no, and
Polarity.
yeah. I guess polarity is unavoidable.
Polarity is mediated by Trinity, which is the stem of your cherry.
Whoa. Whoa. Yeah. That was a cherry way of saying like we're here, we're 3D, but we're like of that thing through the stem. I'd love to look at a cherry now and see like the stem going into the pit and seeing maybe how the flesh forms. I feel like this analogy is somehow like perfect.
It really is. It really is. The addition to the stem, though, that's what got me, because we're going to go back on it one more time, just that the core of our existence, the flesh, that who we are, and then the cherry is just connected to the union of everything.
Yeah.
So just thank you for that again.
Yeah.
That's going to stick for a while.
Well, and I can thank my teachers for it, you know, Naveen Mishan and Abby Galvin and Katona world and the Kundalini world, for all of the ideas, right, to riff off of, to chew on, to spit out, to twirl around.
Yeah. This Kundalini journey of yours is very recent.
Yeah, the pandemic,
Yeah.
right, made the world open source in the sense that we were...
Yeah.
I like that. It's true.
The earth sent us to our bedrooms to think about what we've done. And so in your bedroom, what did you do? In your house, what did you do?
Yeah.
And I studied. And, 20 years I've been running the yoga studios and just literally doing. And the pandemic gave me the opportunity to be and to study and to follow my curiosities. And pre-pandemic, I had been studying in Katona. Katona is offered in New York. It's created by a woman named Naveen Mashan, and one of her primary students is Abby Galvin, and Abby Galvin is who I was studying with. And what Katona does is they say this isn't a system of yoga. You can lay this onto whatever you're teaching. So it's concepts, it's constructs, it's mind maps, it's just Katona plays in the world of metaphor and universal meaning to unite all beings in a way that then you can have a spiritual experience, being a unique thought form, and then you add that uniqueness back into the planet.
Cool.
Yeah. And it's through, and so Katona is derived from many, many different sources, like many rivers lead to the ocean. And so Naveen, took some of the best concepts from Taoist theory, from Kundalini, from the Hatha practices, from sacred geometry, from numerology, and wove together a system of mapping the body to better understand. I feel like that's not necessarily what I wanted to say, but like a system of mapping the body to understand where we are in time and space so that we then have the opportunity for joy. And one of the teachings that I love so much from Katona, from Naveen and Abby, is that joy is technical. Joy it doesn't just happen to you. You have to do the work, right? Like back to you, Nate, when you were saying like the wisdom that came to you is like you weren't putting in your efforts.
Yeah.
You've got to make the efforts if you want to have joy.
Yeah, I've said this 1,000 times on the podcast, but I love this quote so damn much. I was Picasso, I'm pretty sure. He said, inspiration is real, but it must find you working. And I love that because Picasso is humanity will remember that name forever. And this guy is saying, I needed to sit down and just trudge through it like any other person. And I'm just lucky that the muses found me working. And, that's I've never heard of this. It's called Katona.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like MMA for spirituality. Like they just took from everything.
It's the best thing I've ever found.
It really sounds cool.
Information, community, dialogue, language. Yeah, I'm so grateful. I feel like, the time the pandemic allowed, how everyone made the pivot to online, and really the world was open source, but it became even more open source. I no longer have to go to New York to study. I can take class every day.
Yeah.
And I really attribute my studies in time and learning and experience over the pandemic as to the great shifts that I'm now making in life. Yeah.
I can almost picture you like a slingshot, like you've been, like you said, running around and like working to essentially help other people be for so long. And then all this energy, all this potential from you being, let's say, more on the teacher side of that teacher-student, duality, just all that potential like snapped back, and you had a year of like, here you go, like just learn, and like, because there's always this conversation about like your practice and how teaching interferes. I don't know if this is something I've noticed a lot, maybe because I'm attracting it, but a lot of times it has to do with physically practicing. Like some people are teaching the postures and they're doing the postures at the same time instead of, let's say, looking at the students more. And sometimes you need to give examples, but like there's some kind of metaphor in there of like the more you teach, the less you can practice almost, or it's like a part of the practice that becomes centered. And now you have this more, let's say, traditional student vibe where you can sit and learn and be taught and really be receptive. in a way where you're being informed, where new information is coming in, stacking on top of what you knew before, and it's like, I don't know. There's a question in there somewhere. I guess I'm just trying to throw ideas at you.
Yeah, I mean, I really see being when you are in the teacher positioning, you know, you're there for the students. And if you are a student who's a teacher, so that's a little bit of what I heard in what you said. Like, students who are teachers are also not necessarily in their practice because they're looking for ideas, they're looking for inspiration, they're practicing through the teacher mind, right? So all of what I have to say is that the teachers and students, teachers need a home practice that they cultivate so that they can, you know, come and conduct the orchestra. And then it's really, I think, important as a teacher to be able to tune your own instrument at home and then come and play in the orchestra, but know that that's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. That just kind of blew my mind. I think I do that. I think I do. Well, the first one, the bad one. You know, this idea of like trying to harness some kind of teacher mentality, whereas the truth is just be a teacher in the moment when you need to be, and be a student at home when you need to be, or let's say the rest of the time, because there is still just this clear, evident student quality to being a teacher, but you're being a student of the students. You're giving them what they
Teacher comes
need.
from being a student.
Yeah. It's not, this doesn't have to be more complicated than that, I guess. It's just, that's totally what I used to do. Or what I guess I still do is like putting this kind of pedestal teacher vibe, you know, and thinking I need to be a teacher. And it just kind of comes with the practice.
I mean, 2020, right? 2 + 2 is 4. The year of the pandemic, with the 4 year, was the year of destabilizing all of these structures. We've moved into the 5, and now this is energy where it is no longer information held behind a closed curtain. It's no longer, this is about transparent sharing, available, not the hierarchical, patriarchal systems that we've created. And I think one of the biggest places this needs to shift is in the yoga studio. Because no matter what, there is an inherent power dynamic between teacher and student, this pedestal that you're talking about. And what teachers need to do is really just get level. You know, that they're maybe one step ahead of students, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that this is all of this, this restructuring of the structure that we've seen through the opportunity of the pandemic is all about this. How are we going to put things back into place? And what's going to be sustainable?
Yeah. Yeah, what's not sustainable seems like it's sticking out like a sore thumb these days.
Yeah.
And I see what you're saying about it needing to really be there in the studio environment, because this is like the place where people go to learn things like this.
Yeah, and it like perpetuates this like false ideal.
Yeah. I totally get you. Yeah, like the best teacher is going to, like, you're going to reach for the pedestal. Like, even if you're trying to put them higher, it's just going to like evaporate. They're, like you said, they're like a step ahead of you. They're just pulling you along, encouraging you. They're right there with you in the trenches. They're not on high with a speaker, with like a loudspeaker, megaphone, like telling you what to do in order to be blah, blah, blah. You know, like that's going the way of the dodo. Like, that just doesn't fly anymore. Pun not intended.
From my experience of being a student of yoga in your studio at the time, I never really had that sense, or if I did, it was very subtle and it was very temporary. But that sense of that kind of power dynamic, because I guess the place you created was such an open environment. I never felt that it was like this like cultish type of or religious type of way of doing a practice. It was very open to discover yourself and your postures and where you're at that day, at that given moment. And, you know, it was just very humble from the top down, at least in my experience. But it was it was a really good reference point to have now. You know, it definitely did shape me as a person.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of environment. And I know we didn't want to get into it, but it just breaks my heart, Sarah.
I know.
I'm sorry to bring this up, but it's, you know, the whole pandemic was a shock. And hearing some restaurants close was a shock. But when I heard the yoga studio close, it shattered me. Like, it was like, I really had to recover. Like, and I can imagine for the teachers and for you, it just amplified, you know. And I think this episode also is very valuable for those that were part of this community to hear you speak and to see where you've come since and what you've been doing on your journey and this beautiful talk, what you're talking about. But like, that was a tough one. You know? You know, and it made me realize that you have to kind of go through it and feel it and hug it and allow it to be expressed and felt.
I think the grieving from the pandemic is only just about to start, right? As we open up and see what's changed. It felt like what was an impossible decision, Nate, like being my entire life. I mean, yes, I have a family. I didn't realize, let me rephrase that. I didn't realize how much of my identity and the meaning that I drew from being the studio owner was to my sense of self. And, you know, back, the studio model had really shifted in the last few years. I feel like yoga had become really devalued through things like, you know, the Groupons and the sales and the promos. And I felt like it was just spinning out of control. And it made it harder and harder to sustain such a large organization. And when the pandemic came, not initially, but there was a big relief that I was like, okay, I can just stop for a minute and like redirect this ship. And I think I had been trying to for the last few years. But while you're in it, you know, when you're in the storm, it's hard to set course. And so for the first, you know, I guess 10 months of the pandemic, I really reset course, made the changes that I thought would make the studio sustainable and flow. And then what happened is I just stopped believing in the recovery. But beyond that, like when I get really honest, and I guess this is the piece that's hard, is that I was, and I know that it's beyond me, but I was, you know, I had a great team. But at the end of the day, it was up to me in the sense, right? Financially, emotionally. And I didn't want it anymore. I want a space. I want to teach more than ever. I have more creativity, more desire, more chutzpah to share the teachings than ever. So that's really confusing to me, right? Why would you close a space if... And yet it felt like it became such a burden. And spending, you know, 90% of my time doing things that I didn't want to be doing was my life for, you know, a lot of years. And I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it that I didn't want to be doing it, right? Because I loved so much what these, and I always said the studios were like these lighthouses in communities and what they offered to people. And we did so much good. So I'm not taking away from that at all. At the end of the day, after having tasted the art of becoming a real student and like I felt like the pandemic allowed me to become a good teacher again, you know, rather than just spitting out a few classes amidst accounting and marketing and HR and, you know, it's a very uncomfortable, it's still very uncomfortable. I'm still not at ease with this as a decision, because I want to host a space. What I want is I want a collective of people that would be willing to share the responsibility and the like ideas and the generating and the sustaining of a great center.
So like you don't want to be a boss, like you don't want to run it like you did before, because you know like the writing's on the wall at this point. Like you want everyone to come in and collectively.
There needs to be a new model. So just as much as we were talking, you know, when I mentioned like the 4 and the stabilization of the structures and what needs to change in the yoga studio, I think that I would love to see a new model of yoga studio, a new model of spiritual space, sacred space, that really values the worth of the teachings and is inclusive and transparent and
I love that.
yeah.
I can picture what you're describing, and it's almost like a Vipassana type of environment where it's like a collective. It's like we're all in it together kind of thing. Like this thing exists because of all of us putting in work. Almost like in Israel, like the kibbutz is like just this like shared communities that just function. And there's like no money there. It's just they all work together and they live in these utopian little groups.
Makes me think of a dojo as well.
Yeah.
Like there's some kind of respect, I guess. Like there's no better word for it. Like you just, like you said it perfectly. Like you're just worried more about the teaching.
Well,
and
less business, more about what its purest form is, right? Yoga and connecting to self, and less of like a business structure behind it.
You'd almost need the people to be more business oriented that you bring on to kind of like disperse the efforts so that does that make sense? I don't know. I'm trying to think of it like logistically. Like you need a bunch of like business yogis to come in and like anyone can do a bit of anything, so that no one's like too stressed out or like running the show and losing themselves in the minutia.
Yeah.
But the minutia is getting done.
Yeah.
The fascia of the whole kind of business world is strong, but the heart is always the students, the teaching, the
I feel like it always was. Like, Nate, when you said, like, when you came to the studio, you never felt the kind of, like, power structure. Like, you just felt, like, very open, supportive.
Yeah.
And that was truly my wish, you know? So I'm glad you felt that.
Yeah, me
Really
and many
glad you
others.
felt that,
I mean,
yeah.
that it was like kind of the momentum of life. You just go back to the studio. It was just like a space to just reconnect, but there was no external pressures. Like I would go martial arts gym. It's obviously a different type of vibe, but it's very yang energy and very intense, which is awesome. But when you go to the yoga studio, it's just like this. It's just like a breath of fresh air in there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just from the people there, the community built, from the teachers, and just from the space.
Yeah. So many great people.
Yeah.
You know, from the energy exchange program, desk, teachers, students. Yeah, it was really pretty amazing.
Yeah. A lot has sprung from there because I would have never found out about ayahuasca because I talked to someone there who was happening to go to a ceremony, and we went. And then eventually, if you look in the timeline, this came from an ayahuasca ceremony. This podcast, so it's all kind of tied into that space. So
It's so interesting. It's only once I close that I learned some of these like deeper connections people made.
Yeah.
You know, they would write and say, you know, I met my husband there. I met my wife there. I had this, you know, opportunity, or I met the love, you know, just so many. It's coming together.
That's what it really is.
Yeah.
You know, studio or not, it's just the community.
Yeah.
The shared agreement that this means something to us. You know?
like a chakra, like a hub.
I use the word hub a lot in my new vision.
I like that idea because it can move. It's allowed to be like a little like transient or flimsy.
Mm.
In some structures, in some ways, it needs to really show up, but in other ways, it's like, oh, we're in this new location or whatever. Like, and I wonder, like, you know, like humanity kind of went online for a year. Like, did this? Is there a remnant? Is there like, there must be like this kind of community that was built around the physical location or the name or the business or whatever. There must be so much, let's say, left over. So much still.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we're still teaching in parks and online. And, you know, I guess 15, 16 months have happened. A lot of people's patterns have changed. The closing of the brick and mortar is one aspect. My commitment was to still keep the teachers who wanted to be involved teaching in this, under this, the name Studio Without Walls, which I actually really love. I really love. It came from, in a sense, this love letter that I was writing the teachers to share with them the final decisions of, you know, I think I'd been fairly transparent along the way with them of the journey, of the challenges, of what I was thinking. But in this kind of like final love letter, it came out, Studio Without Walls, and I thought, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
You know? And even if we were to reopen, you know, in some magical sphere in that space, that it could still be the Studio Without Walls because it would be totally redefined. You know, in the next layer of consciousness that the pandemic has brought us all to.
Yeah, I feel you. I think like in the DNA of the new, you know, there's just it's not, you're not going to show up once a week and do some postures. Like, you're going to learn something about your body, and you're going to think about it when you're sitting on the bus, or like, you know, like when you're lifting something, or when you're like at work and your breath changes and you
when
suddenly
someone cuts you off on the, on the highway,
especially just the space becomes the space, you know, like the.
Yeah, it's Studio Without Walls. That's a great way to sign out.
Oh yeah, we are.
We hit our time.
We're like 10 minutes over about.
Yeah,
that's
we
perfect.
Yeah, it is perfect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sarah.
Wow.
Yeah,
we went all over the cosmos.
I
loved it. I loved
From
it.
the 3D to the 5D and maybe beyond. I don't even know.
I personally, I mean, like, that was perfect, but I always feel this way. I just can't wait to talk to you again. You know, like in a few months or something, just see like what's up.
Love that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you have any last words, if you want to share, if people can follow you, or if there's something that you're doing that's going to be live or online. I mean, Studio Without Walls is pretty open to the world, right?
Studio Without Walls is, you know, there's a Zoom platform and there's the outdoor platform.
Okay.
I created something called the Imprint, which is a 40-day meditation practice that's anchored 4 times a year around the equinox and the solstices. We're in one right now. It's called Radical Radiance because we're working the radiant body. It's delightful.
You're really good at naming things.
I know. I love words.
Yeah.
They have a vibration, they carry energy, and I really love words. I love the combinations of words.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
And so, it's this super cool 22-minute. We do the same meditation every day for 40 days. I teach it live every day at 6 a.m. There's a pre-recorded version of 22 minutes or 11 minutes. You know when you just can't fit 22 minutes in your day?
Cut it in half.
Cut it in half. And then there's educational components to it. So I lead a workshop every Monday during the 40 days, and we explore deep concepts, you know, desire. What do I desire? How do I create a vision from desire? Energetic architecture. What does actual self-care feel like, look like? What is a habit stack? You know, so I kind of touch on all these elements of a program. And then I guess the last piece of it, so it's meditation, education, and community. And we gather in groups, and I have group forum and discussion, and we just have a place to share.
I want to
So-
be in on this.
Yeah, man. I would love you to be in on
I
it.
want to be in
Yeah,
on it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is
It's-
happening.
So that's under the Sara Gallagher Bloom banner, and I guess the best way is probably just to find me on Instagram at Sara
Okay.
Gallagher Bloom. Which Nate, that's how we
Yeah.
were in touch. And
Oh, yeah, I'll put a link too, just for those interested.
Oh yeah, we'll do
Sweet.
all the.
Thank you, Sarah.
thank you guys.
This was awesome.
What a joy.
Yes,
you,
thank
please.
you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, stay curious.